Hello everyone, good afternoon and welcome to our webinar today in partnership with Vitality and Peppy. My name is Jamie and I am one of the Vitality coaches. Now, I know what you're all thinking, and full disclosure, what does this bloke know about the menopause? And you're definitely absolutely right on that, and you're probably not the only one thinking it as well. So although my background is actually slightly clinical as a physiologist, the answer is I actually don't know a lot at all about the menopause, and that's kind of the point why I'm actually delivering this session today as well. So in celebration of World Menopause Day, we're going to be bringing you an educational discussion and be answering your questions live. So the first piece of housekeeping for me to do is to invite you to navigate to the right-hand side of your screen where you have a control panel, and within there is a questions box. Please do get involved in the conversation today. This session is here for you. We're here to support you, and we really want to make sure that the content covers everything that you need. So I promise I shall keep an eye out on that. If you want to say hi, if you want to let me know what you're thinking throughout, any thoughts, comments, feedback, anything is welcome. So please do really get involved in the conversation. Now, thankfully, the conversation around menopause is actually getting much louder, and hopefully you're all aware of that as well. I think that women's health is hopefully becoming what mental health has been and was a few years ago, and awareness and understanding for menopause and supporting women's health is growing, but the point remains that more is needed to be done. So just a quick stat here for you. By 2025, 1.1 billion women across the world will be experiencing the menopause transition. And we need to be in a position as a society and as a group to support that. So that's kind of the basis of why we're here today. And looking ahead to the session, I'm not the expert, like I said, but we do have four experts who are either absolute experts in their field or those who have experienced the impact that support can have whilst navigating their way through the challenges that are inevitably associated with the menopause. So I'm going to give some quick intros now, and then we'll invite everyone out one by one. But firstly, we have Kathy Abernethy, who is the Director of Menopause Services at Peppy, as well as past Chair of the British Menopause Society. We've worked with Kathy previously, you might have come across her. I think she knows everything that you do need to know about menopause and is going to share all of her knowledge with us today, which is great. We will then be joined by Pippa Andrews, who is the Director of Corporate Business at Vitality. And Pippa has been like a real driver in delivering the Peppy services to our members. And I know it's something that she's really passionate about. And then lastly, but 100% not least, we also have two Vitality members, Nikki and Monica, who'll be joining us. And they're going to be sharing their stories and experiences through menopause, which I have no doubt will be really relatable to our audience. So hopefully you can see that within the session, we've got the expert angle, we've got the business angle, and then we've got the real life stories, all of which hopefully will help you to go away knowing a little bit more. And certainly me too. I think it's important that men are involved in this conversation. It's a group effort, and awareness is definitely the place to start. So once we've covered all of that super interesting content, which will be about the first 30 to 40 minutes, we'll then be dedicating plenty of time to answer your questions at the end. So please do get these submitted. We've got quite a lot of questions that have been pre-submitted and registered. I have a list of all of those and we'll do our very best to cover them. But again, make sure you get involved in the chat and make sure that you get your answer to what you need to today. All right, that's already far too much from me. So I'm actually going to bring out our first guest, who is Kathy Avenefi. Kathy, hopefully you're there. You are. How are you?
Yes, good afternoon. I'm here. Thank you.
Amazing. That is the most challenging step of this process. So
It is indeed.
we're in a good place. Kathy, thanks so much for joining today. I guess that the section that you're going to be covering is a basic understanding of the menopause and a little bit more about some of the issues that you've become aware of in regards to like the gaps and the missing pieces. So for context, really, what's the basic fact about menopause that everyone needs to know, like an introduction, I guess, to menopause?
So how long have you got, Jamie? Okay, what I would say is that I'm not at all surprised that you and plenty of other people like you don't really understand what the menopause is. Even those of us that are going to go through menopause are poorly prepared for it, and we don't really know what it is. And simply put, the menopause itself is just that physiological time when our periods stop. And that makes it sound very simple. And if that's all it was, it would probably be a non-issue for us. But the problem is the menopause is associated with the perimenopause, which is the time either side which our periods stop. And the perimenopause can start many months or even years for some women before their periods even stop. And during the perimenopause is when we start to get symptoms. So the classic symptoms like flushes and sweats and so on. And during that time, we go in and out of symptoms, and we can have myriads of symptoms, some of us. And the effect that that can have on people at home, social lives, and at work can be immense for some people.
So I guess that we're here today to not only support individuals, but also like working women and people that want to function with their own lives. And you mentioned there about how some symptoms are more extreme than others. What's the like range of symptoms and what severity can they come in? Like, can they be so debilitating that they affect day-to-day life? I know it's going to be different for all, but again, everyone's going to have different experiences. So is there like some general ones that you could give us to look out for, I guess?
Yeah, certainly. And bearing in mind that 3/4 of women will get symptoms to some degree. Now, some of those will be not very troubling at all, and probably about 1/4 of women don't seem to get any symptoms, and we just don't understand why some do and some don't. It's probably a combination of physical effects and also daily life effects and stresses as well, which impact symptoms. But the sorts of symptoms that people get, so the classic one that we can all recognise, flushes, sweats, waking up at night, not sleeping, feeling tired, in fact, more than tired, absolutely exhausted is how people describe it. If you imagine what it's like to have broken sleep every night for months on end, sometimes years on end, it's really not surprising then the next day if you're shattered, you're exhausted, and you find it difficult to do your job. So those are sort of the physical symptoms, but then there's also symptoms that creep up on us that we may not even be aware are related to menopause at all. So we start to notice that we're beginning to lose words, word blindness, that's called. Can't quite place people's names, can't quite put our thoughts together as clearly as we could have done. Brain fog, which people describe as feeling a little bit woolly. You know it, you're still competent at your job, but the clarity of thought has just gone. And that can lead to concentration issues and sometimes even to an undermining of your confidence, because you start to think, oh, I thought I could do this, but actually it's become much harder. And so these symptoms, probably in about 1/4 of women, they're marked enough, they're bad enough that people have to make changes to their lives.
Right, because it's all of those symptoms that you've just mentioned. We've been inundated with questions before asking, how can I alleviate the effects of these? Like, what can be done? Can anything be done? Because it seems like people are almost in despair and they don't know where to turn. So I guess, how does Peppy support individuals who are going through the menopause? Like, what is the solution for women who are having trouble and issues?
I think probably if others are like me, the first thing you do is you turn to Dr. Google. You know, you do a search, you put menopause into Google, you will get literally millions of returns. How on earth do you know what's reliable, what's evidence-based, what's accurate? And probably what's more important is what's actually relevant to you, because it's easy to find the statistics around HRT or about symptoms, but what is much more difficult to do is what can I do as an individual? So at Peppy, we come alongside people to make those choices that's right for them. So through the app, we can offer instant messaging with a practitioner like me, so you get your questions answered straight away, relevant to you. We can give you a library of resources so that you can go away at your own leisure, pick the subjects that are particularly relevant to you, and then you can have a consultation as well, where you can really hone in on how you want to manage your symptoms and your menopause, because it's not just about symptoms, it's about looking after your health as well for the future. And at Vitality and at Peppy, that's really important to all of us. So it's bringing together those options and then having somebody alongside you with some expertise to actually guide you through those choices.
And so with it being app-based, is it more individualized support? So like you say, I think we've all gone into the trap of Google Doctor, misdiagnosed, probably always in a negative way as well. Like, I've definitely been terminally ill too many times when I've actually not been. Do you listen to the cases by, as an individual and then provide support based on that?
Yeah, so when you engage with us at Peppy, you're engaging with somebody exactly like me, a real nurse, a real person. You just happen to access it digitally through the app. But the person you're speaking to at the end, whether that's through the text messaging or through Zoom or through a telephone call, is actually a real nurse, experienced in women's health and particularly trained in menopause. So they're used to doing this on a day-to-day basis, and they can really listen to your story and then hone in on advice that's specific and personal to you.
Amazing. I think that's the key to health going forward is the individualized approach, and everyone has different needs, and we need to be accepting of that rather than just blanketing everyone with the same advice. Kathy, you are always so helpful at sharing your knowledge. That's a great start, but we'll definitely be hearing much more from you in the Q&A at the end. So everyone, please do make sure you get your questions in. And Kathy will be digging into lots of the different areas in terms of signs and symptoms, but also management as well. So Kathy will check back in with you later, but thanks so much already for the start. Next, I am going to bring out Pippa, who's going to be sharing a little more about how the work with Vitality has worked with Peppy. And Pippa, you are like so passionate about this, and I know that you've worked in this area a lot. So I guess I'm just going to tee you up, and you're just going to smash this next part out of the park. But can you tell us a bit more about the menopause support with Vitality, why this is a focus, and why it's so important to us as a business, but also you as an individual?
Yes, hi everyone, and thanks Jamie for the intro. I am passionate about it, and I guess I stumbled across it like so many people, thinking I work for a health organisation, I know about health, I know about what's coming down the road for me. But it wasn't until I started getting symptoms of what I now know to be the perimenopause that I started looking into it a little bit more. And as you referenced, I also used the famous Dr. Google and found lots of confusing and conflicting pieces of information. I was getting atypical symptoms, and I didn't know whether it was COVID lockdown actually as well, because I think that complicates matters as we were going through that potentially at the same time. But I reached out to my doctor and I got very little information, very little support, and they said, go try do some exercise, make sure you get a good night's sleep, all the things that I'd already tried doing, as you say, working for an organisation like Vitality. So I identified a gap actually, that our program supports people do all the things that can support menopause, but we don't necessarily give people the information and the clinical support within the healthcare industry, broadly speaking, not just us, that I think women are missing out on. And I think also employers were reaching out to us and saying, what do you do specifically to support menopause, women going through that period of their life? What information have you got? How do you support? So in my Google search, I found Peppy. And I reached out to Peppy and said, okay, I'm this position within Vitality. I came across this accidentally and noticed it was for employers. What can we do together? How could we collaborate? And quickly started discussing that actually Peppy would be something that we potentially could provide across to all of our member base, not just employers and employees, but all of our health members. And so that's what we started embarking upon. The neat thing was that we have this thing called World Menopause Day. As we know, we're reaching it again this year. And it was a nice push for us to galvanize the business and get everybody behind a need to go out there with something quickly, because we wanted to be, I guess, first out there providing this service for all our members. It fits really nicely into our brand values, making people healthier and being a force for social good as well. And so having identified the gap and highlighted that gap to our executive team, we moved really quickly actually to bring Peppy Menopause support in for our whole member base, and we're really glad we did. I mean, the feedback that we've had from members using the services has been amazing. As you've identified and Kathy pointed out, it links very nicely into the wider health and wellbeing program. So how activity reduces the risk of osteoporosis, for example, and that can be steps, walking your dog. It doesn't need to be running marathons. We have Champney support services. We have mindfulness support services. People can get trainers if they want to start getting out and being a bit more active. We have health checks for people so they can go and check their blood pressure, their cholesterol, and all those things that help people understand their health and well-being and how they can be a bit more well, I guess, and support their menopause journey. But the clinical bit was the bit that was missing for me, and the specific specialized support services for menopause. And that's why we partnered with Peppy. We didn't feel we had those specialist support and expertise available within our program and could guide people through. And so I use that journey myself. I'm a big advocate of it. I'm a bit of an expert on it. And I'm regularly, I guess, talking about it within our Women's Health Network, within our organisation, and also speaking about it at employer events and things as well. So that's been the journey for me, and the feedback, that we've changed women's lives, and that so many people have found the support services from Peppy in addition to our Vitality support programme, and we integrate it as much as we can with them knowing about our services, our Vitality GP knowing about the Peppy services that are available. So we've got all different signposts for women to get them into that journey.
Amazing. I'm going to ask a rogue question here, Pippa, which isn't part of the plan, but it's interesting to hear what you were saying there as well. And obviously, a big part of our program is the fact that it is holistic. You mentioned all of those benefits the members have. And so it's interesting when we have like World Menopause Day as a one-off. Obviously, like our aim is to make this a consistent conversation. Absolutely. And our whole month for the theme of our events is around supporting women's health. And often the conversation comes up about investing in retention of talent. And if you don't support women in the right way, then the chances are you're not going to be able to retain them as a valuable member and an employee. And there are things that you might need to do and invest in. So Vitality are the first private medical insurer to offer specialist menopause support. Why do you think that is? Why do you think it hasn't been valued previously? And where do you think we are in the journey in terms of making it a standard going forward?
It's a great question. I think simply lack of awareness. As I say, I'm on the senior leadership team, even within Vitality Health, and it hadn't come up in discussions. I think the lack of awareness is where, as you say, mental health was many years ago, and it's been through that journey, and it's commonplace, it's normal now. But I think employees as well, particularly through COVID, have started seeking more and more support from their employers. They're expecting more and more their employers to support them and not just treat acute clinical medical conditions, which is what private medical insurance historically was there to do. But it was a taboo. It isn't discussed. Largely speaking, it still isn't discussed. Very many organisations don't have menopause policies. They don't have menopause as potentially a recognised cause for absence. They don't have programs and support services available. So I think many women, unfortunately, are suffering in silence, and so that's why I think it's something that employers are just waking up to now. As there's a little bit of a movement, I think the Me Too and sort of other women's movements, I think have helped expedite and push it along a little more. But we need to do far more talking about it, and we need the awareness to be much, much higher going forwards. Yeah.
Never waste a crisis, and maybe the pandemic has been an opportunity for us to reassess, and awareness, like you say, is the key. So I have a role, hence why I'm here, and I want to be able to spread the message to men and women and everyone here. Like, this is a group effort, so hopefully do share these sessions, do speak about it openly. I think that's something that needs to be encouraged. It's a cultural shift as well as an awareness shift as well. Pippa, you are at the forefront, which is really cool to see. And thank you for your part there, but it's not all we're going to hear from you. So I'll catch up with you again in a bit. But thanks so much for now. Perfect. All right. Next, I am going to invite our very special guests who are also complete legends. They are officially, and well, I say officially, they are Vitality members, and they have both benefited from accessing Peppy and the support through Vitality, but they also speak really, really openly and honestly. So this part, maybe it's something that you can relate to as a viewer. It's really a good way to understand and kind of get the thoughts and the feelings and emotions that might be attached with the signs and symptoms and the troubles that you may experience through menopause. As Kathy said, 3/4 of women will experience something. So it's definitely, again, awareness is the key. So Monica and Nikki, I hope you are both there. Please join me right now if you are. Yes, Nikki. Monica, how are you guys doing?
Very well, thank you.
We're good.
Good, good. Thanks so much for joining us today. You're officially on telly. I'm going to ask this question to you both, but I'll make sure I direct it because I know it's terrible hosting to just ask you both the question. So, Nikki, if I start with you, just because you're on the left of my screen, how did you find out about Peppy?
Well, weirdly enough, I actually had downloaded Peppy around 6 months ago when I'd first kind of realizing that I was actually perimenopausal, and I've been having symptoms for around 3 years. Had gone to my GP and they'd prescribed me venlafaxine, which was for my anxiety mainly, but luckily enough there's a side effect that's supposed to help hot flushes, but I can't say it did very much for me. So I was kind of carrying on and getting worse and worse. And you know, the list that Kathy gave earlier of the different symptoms, it was kind of like a tick list. It was starting to become really silly. This was definitely me. And my friend at work was getting fed up with listening to me, and she said, Nikki, watch that Davina program. So my husband was away. He was kind of like you. Was like, I don't watch it on your own. I don't really want to kind of know about that sort of stuff, right? So I was watching the Davina program. By the end of it, I was sobbing, sitting on my sofa, going, "That's me." Oh, I've got Vitality. I'm gonna have a look and see if they've got anything for menopause. So tapped into Vitality. Oh yeah, there's an app called Peppy, which I already had. So from that moment, I admit I sobbed my heart out. I tapped a message into Peppy, into the chat, and the first message I got back was, "You're in the right place, darling. Tell us what you need to know." And just to have someone communicate with me was amazing. To be able to say, you know, I'm here to help you, talk to us. Because all my friends, every time I spoke to them, they were kind of going, yeah, no, we're okay. And so I just felt isolated. So just having this voice to support me was amazing.
It's only when you hear people explain their stories that like you can have any understanding. Like for something to make you upset is it's got to be pretty significant in your life. Someone has actually just put a comment in, and I'm going to challenge everyone watching to do this. They said, I lead menopause awareness sessions in my organization, and we ask attendees to take a pledge to raise the topic with 5 other people in their lives. If you do that, I mean, I won't do anything, but we'll say thank you, obviously, and it's a good thing to do. But put in the questions box, I commit, or something like that. Like, let's see how many people we can actually get to continue this conversation, because Nikki's story is one example, and we're going to hear from Monica in a second, and it's going to be obvious, and it's going to be something that you don't know unless it's talked about more, and it shouldn't be something to be ashamed of. Heather has already committed, legend, but we need to get more people on board. So Monica, I guess similar question to you, like how did you hear about Peppy? Do we need to thank Davina on your behalf as well?
Well, actually, in my case, it was more my sister who first introduced me to the wonders of the perimenopause. So she's 6 years older than me, and I was visiting her in Finland, and this was going back a couple of years, actually. And she very sort of carefully started broaching it and saying, well, you know, Monica, has there been any changes in your body? And I said, well, maybe, but tell me a little bit more. And then she told me about how she had been suffering for several years before eventually going to the doctors and seeing specialists. One of the things that she'd really had difficulties with was her sleep, and then numerous other things. And eventually, obviously, she then went on to HRT and whatnot, things that worked for her after several trials. But what really helped was the openness that she showed me in discussing an issue that nobody has ever discussed with me before, which is surprising because, of course, you know, I was approaching my mid-40s, and in fact, everybody I'd ever discussed it with before or after have always said, well, hang on a minute, isn't this something that happens in your 50s? You're well away from it. So knowing that my sister had started getting these symptoms sort of in her mid-40s, and I was approaching that, and also knowing that I had been having some issues with my sleep and a few other things that had cropped up. So when Peppy sent me an email, or Vitality sent me an email explaining that there was this Peppy app available via my health insurance, I literally jumped with the chance to get acquainted with it, and my very first thing was to just take the sort of introductory course on the app itself, and then to start texting one-to-one with one of the specialists, and that was a really great experience. And in my book, knowledge is power, and even though in some ways I was and am at, you know, the very sort of starting point of my perimenopause, the thing is, what I don't want to do is go through the same situation that my sister went through, which was suffering in silence for years and years and not really knowing what was going on with her body.
It's one of those things whereby like suffering in silence has come up a lot, and there's been a few questions as well around like, how do I bring up these conversations? So we're going to bring that to Pippa definitely in the Q&A. But I'd just like to say that there's a lot of people who have committed here, which is so good. So I reckon right now there's over 100 people who are going to tell someone else about this conversation, this topic. One thing I would challenge as well is that I haven't seen a single male name pop up yet. So maybe as one of your 5, we can also ask you to speak to a male about this conversation as well, because again, like, listen to these two, that I'm sure we can all learn a lot from people that have experienced it firsthand. Nikki, if I come back to you right now, you mentioned about like how finding somewhere to turn was such a big occasion for you, and that you felt relief and there was practitioners there that could support you. With your signs and symptoms, like, was there a particular low? Like, what did you suffer with the most, I guess?
I think I just got to the point where I didn't feel like me anymore. My waistline had completely disappeared. I was sweating all the time. I was tired, as Kathy mentioned, you know, the brain fog. I have to be on webinars every day with my job, and I'd be sitting there thinking, please don't ask me a question because the words aren't coming. And I'd sit there and go, you know, and it was just embarrassing. So I just got to that point where I just thought, oh, I just can't be bothered. I'm just not me anymore, and what's the point, really? And it was just so brilliant to be able to chat to somebody, going, you know, you're fine. This is all normal. And they gave me a really good tool to be able to talk to my GP, because I was petrified. You know, you hear all these stories of Dr. Google will tell you, or your doctor will send you away 20, 30 times. They won't want to talk to you. And the guys on the Peppy line gave me those tools to be able to speak to my GP and know what to say to them. And they did that intuitively. They got me to book an appointment with my GP, and within 10 minutes of booking my appointment, I said, I've got my appointment. They said, are you a bit nervous about it? Yes. Right, here's some information, read that. These are the things you need to say and the things that you need to get across. And it was brilliant. And I had the most amazing chat to my GP, who, thank goodness, was really understanding as well. And I started my HRT a week later. But I felt empowered with the information that I had to be able to have that conversation and know what I wanted, which I hadn't felt for a very long time.
And as well as being empowered to have these conversations, how did the HRT treatment affect your symptoms? Like, did it make an instant difference?
Not instantly. I had a month of a lower dose of patches, and I spoke to my GP again after the month, and I said I'm still having hot flushes, still feeling, you know, the symptoms of insomnia and anxiety. And she said, okay, let's up your dose, wait another month and let's see how we're going. So I'm 3 months in. I'm getting there. It hasn't cured everything, but I'm not having those hot sweats continuously, which is the best thing.
Amazing, cool. So progress is being made, and I guess again the important thing is that you know that you have people there to speak to as well. Monica, I understand that your symptoms maybe weren't as obvious, and it was kind of quite difficult to figure out what exactly was going on. So can you explain like your journey with how you found support and what support that was and how that worked for you?
Well, I experienced some of the same things that Nikki was explaining as well. I mean, the one thing that just sort of really hit me was not feeling present. I felt like I was an alien walking on this earth from time to time, like really just super spaced out. And the word blindness, I've always been really, really expressive and into, you know, just talking in general about anything, and at times I would just feel completely kind of removed from my brain, and that was a really disconcerting feeling for me. I also started experiencing some joint issues and then some skin issues, and there was a specific issue that came up that once I had my one-to-one discussion with the Peppy specialist, I explained in great detail and I said, actually, you know what, you should go and see a doctor about this because it may be this one thing. And I then went on and booked an appointment with the doctor straight away, which was a very good thing to do. And, you know, everything got sorted. But had I not spoken to a specialist, I might have just sat on this for way longer. So getting that one-to-one, you know, help from somebody on the Zoom session that we had was just absolutely wondrous. And you know, basically stopped me from suffering with this issue for any longer than I needed to.
I think the message, like for anything health related, is pretty consistent in that just talk, like reach out, ask questions. And we're getting so many comments right now about people saying how they don't feel like their bosses are going to be able to support them. They don't feel like they have the sort of connection or relationship with the support groups they have around them. So why was it important for you both to come on today and share your story? Because like you're both obviously great speakers about this, but you also have come on a journey. Like Nikki, you said you're experiencing symptoms for like 3 years. So why today? Like, why did it take so long? And what would your advice be to those people that really are like, feel like they've got nowhere to turn?
Yeah, it was really tricky actually because my mum had a hysterectomy very young, literally straight after she'd had me. So, you know, back in the 1800s. So, you know, she had no experience of these symptoms, you know. So, and I kept mentioning it to my friends, and they were kind of not really listening to me. And feeling alone was the worst thing. So, if I can just talk like this and ensure that people are having that conversation, that they feel open to having that conversation, just reach out. Somebody out there will be there. Honestly, get onto Peppy. They are amazing. And once you have these conversations, you'll start to have those conversations with other people. It's getting past that, just finding someone. And yeah, Peppy was the thing that helped me.
Amazing. Good. And I'm glad that you're in this position now. And everyone listening, I think your message is powerful. So I'm sure that they're going to take some action from this as well. And Monica, same question to you really. Like, what's your message to everyone watching? And just on a side note, like, how do you feel about things today now that you do have support?
Well, it's wonderful. For one, for example, I was able to discuss the situation with my boss, who's male and in his late 40s, and I was able to say, look, you know, from time to time I am having problems doing my job in as good a way as I would like to, and I'm experiencing brain fog, etc. And he just said, look, you know, take all the time you need to, and I really understand. And I was really, you know, quite surprised at how well he took it and how helpful he was with everything. But had I not had that conversation with him, had I not felt empowered from the discussion I'd had with the Peppy specialist, I might never have done it and again continue to suffer in silence. So that was one of the things that, you know, came out of my session with Peppy. That was super helpful, and I'd encourage everybody to have those conversations and feel empowered, because if we don't, then who will, and how will that information go, you know, be shared? The thing that really also encouraged me was, again, when I was with my sister last summer, in fact, and I went to a party with her, and there was all her friends in a similar sort of age group of about 50, 51 too. And there was 5 of them, and they were all discussing their menopause journey. And I was so just pleasantly surprised at how open they were, and everybody had very different symptoms. Everybody had gone through a very different path, but what just was so wonderful about it was that nobody was hiding about it. Nobody was feeling embarrassed in any way. They were really open. I could feel that they were all empowered by their common journey. And for that reason, I thought, well, every opportunity I get, I will discuss this with my friends, because even though most of my friends are, you know, early, mid 40s or whatever, it doesn't matter. Even if they're not experiencing it right now, they will in all likelihood be experiencing it soon. And, you know, if I can share something that I've gone through and some of the symptoms, of which there are so plenty and everybody's are different, you know, maybe they'll start thinking, hang on a minute, there's nothing wrong with me. Actually, this is probably the menopause. It's time for me to talk to somebody about it and see what I can get, what sort of help I can get.
I think we need to give a massive shout out to Davina and Monica's sister. I think they're both game changers. Someone's actually just put in the comments, I actually also watched the Davina program. I honestly feel watching it gave me the confidence to see my GP. So if what we're saying today here has got you interested, maybe I've never seen that program, I should watch it. But what I like the idea of is being the person that can make the difference. And again, that's why men should be here. That's why women should be here. And if you're part of that 5 people circle that you committed to, then you could genuinely change someone's life. And it's really cool to hear your story both. I did think you were both legends before. You're even better today. You smashed that. So thank you so much for your time today. And I've definitely learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone else has too. So hopefully we'll hear from you again soon. But thank you again for your time.
No problem. Thanks, Jamie.
Legends, thank you. So we've had a lot of engagement today, and we need to get to the questions. So at this point, I'm going to invite Kathy back with Pippa, and we are going to kind of cover the sections in 2 parts. Hi, Kathy. We're going to do signs and symptoms and diagnosis, and then the second part will be about treatment, management, and remedies. So there's also a lot of sort of really individual questions in here. So if we don't get to them, you know where to go, you know where the support is, and hopefully we can give you the confidence to go ahead and do that. There's actually a few questions that we have covered as well along the way, but Kathy, I'm going to start with you in terms of the signs, symptoms, and diagnosis. We've covered that sort of 3/4 of women will experience symptoms. Are you able to provide any more information about when you can expect to experience these symptoms if you do though? Is there a certain age group? How accurate is it? And again, like how varied can the time be?
It really can be quite wide, although the average is 51. So if you've got to about 48, 49 and not experienced anything yet, you'd be in the minority. Most women are beginning to see symptoms in their late 40s, and for a few it'll be sooner than that. Periods stop around 51, but symptoms usually start before you see a change in your period. So that's, you know, people don't always appreciate that. And by the way, that's when you can start treatment as well. You don't have to wait for your periods to stop before you have treatment. And we mustn't forget our younger women, people who go into menopause at a much younger age, 1 in 1,000 under 30, 1 in 100 under 40. But the majority of women, somewhere between 45 and 55.
Perfect, thank you. And then based off of that, how do you diagnose perimenopause? And the second part of that question, Pippa, will probably be to you in terms of, is that something Vitality can support with? And again, maybe your experiences too.
Diagnosis of menopause is not as clear cut as you might expect. I mean, it would be great if we could just do a simple saliva test or a blood test or something and just say, yes, you're in perimenopause. But the perimenopause is a phase. So you'll go in and out of hormonal fluctuations. So doing a blood test, especially if you're of the normal age, 45 or more, is really not going to be very useful. So what my team of nurses are used to doing is actually listening and taking a clinical history, using their skills to assess whether the symptoms you're experiencing are typically menopause, are you the right age, and what's happening with your periods. And what we do is we build up a picture, and from that we can give a fairly good idea as to whether or not this is menopause. And because my nurses also are healthcare professionals, they can also help you decide if there's something else wrong. And then of course Vitality can help you with that.
Amazing. Again, it seems more closely related to mental well-being, where there isn't obvious physical signs always. Pippa, in terms of, like Kathy's just said there, is there any support that Vitality can offer in this area?
There is, Peppy. Absolutely right. Yeah, it's not something that I think women are routinely prepared for discussing in a long enough session with a GP. I know from my own experience, a 5-7 minute slot with a GP, if I go to talk about one thing, they talk about the one thing. You don't necessarily have the time and availability to talk about maybe all of the other types of things that a woman may be experiencing. And the GPs, based on the limited training they have, I think, on menopause, aren't necessarily, that's if you go to your normal GP, aren't necessarily primed and ready to maybe open up the conversation and find out if that particular symptom that you go to them with is more widely related to menopausal symptoms. So the biggest thing we do, we've got Vitality GP. So if women do go into that talking about a symptom, they are trained to know and understand and to look for signs and to effectively signpost into Peppy. So the quickest thing we can do really is to get people into those specialist conversations, so that a more detailed conversation and a much longer conversation can be had with a Peppy specialist. I think 45 minutes, I think, is the typical consultation time with Peppy. And from my own experience, you need that to explore all the breadth of how you're feeling, what your symptoms are, what your history is, to really define whether you are in that perimenopause or indeed menopausal state. So yeah, that's our main intervention really, is to seek Peppy.
Nice, perfect. I think the questions and comments coming through about like the number of various signs and symptoms that people are experiencing shows that it is so complex. So like time is needed to figure things out. And Pippa, I don't know if you intentionally did that, but you've like literally teed me up perfectly for the next question, which is about management of medical professionals. So Kathy, we're not here to criticize or say that, you know, medical professionals don't care and they don't spend enough time, but we know our bodies better than anyone else. So how do you approach your GP, for example, when you feel like something's going on and they've just said, oh, it's fine, it's just normal, whatever? Like, do you have any advice about how to sort of really make the conversation be a bit more serious and personalized?
Yeah, I mean, Nikki highlighted it really when she said that I don't feel me. She said, I'm not myself. And that's what I hear time and time again. And so I would reiterate what you say, Jamie, listen to your body, because you do actually get to know, you know, you get tuned in to what's right for you and what's not. My tips, if you're going to see your GP, in particular, remember some GPs are absolutely brilliant, but you're not going to get very long. So prepare for the consultation. Think about your opening line. Think about what it is you're hoping to get from it. So are you wanting reassurance? Are you wanting diagnosis? Are you wanting treatment? Be clear at the outset what it is that you want, and then you're more likely to achieve it. With Peppy, of course, we can prepare you, as Nikki said as well, for that consultation, so that you've got the information to hand that we think the GP is going to ask you.
And on that point of preparation, this is going smoothly with you two teaming me up. Can you be prepared in advance? So there's obviously physical and mental symptoms that you might get, and you can maybe expect at a certain age. Now, that's not defined or set, but is there a way that you can actually be prepared for this to happen? Because again, I guess there's an added part to this, Kathy, in terms of, is there an average length of like perimenopause that people will experience as well?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be scaremongering, but the average length of time for perimenopause is around 5 to 7 years, so quite a long time. The averages, of course, mean that some will be much, much quicker than that for some people, and some might be a bit longer. Is there anything you can prepare? I think there is. I think, first of all, understanding what might happen so that you're tuned into those changes when they do, that's one step. But also putting yourself in a position of good health, because we know that if you look after your health and you're looking after your weight management, your alcohol intake is reasonable, you're not smoking, you're taking your daily exercise, that's going to set you up well for your menopause. Not that, I mean, the menopause is not discerning, unfortunately, and even if you do all the right things, you can still get symptoms, but it certainly puts you in the right place to be moving forward and thinking about the health changes as well as the symptoms, alongside all the emotional side. You know, trying not to put yourself in stressful situations, trying to relieve the anxiety, things that as we go through menopause, life hits us as well. So as well as the hormonal changes, we're likely to have young children or teenage children leaving home, not leaving home, coming back home, all of those stresses, relationships, partners, work, parents, elderly parents, parents-in-law. I mean, it all just begins to pile up. So preparing for menopause means also looking at your life and looking at those issues.
I didn't think that list was going to end, Kathy. You're right. Like when you look at it in that way, there's a lot of things to manage. And Pippa, I know you keep super fit and healthy, and I know that obviously the Vitality program supports you with that. Did you find looking after your own physical and mental well-being first had an impact on the symptoms that you were experiencing?
I absolutely think it did, and I made full use of the services that were available to me and continue to do so. So I try and keep fit and healthy. I try and get my activity up there every week. I guess I was more conscious of it when I started looking into the menopause more broadly, around the wider effects, not just for my lifespan and being fit and healthy generally, but actually how it can help improve and minimize some of the symptoms that I was finding going through the menopause. I found red wine to be a particularly bad trigger for me, which is something that I never drank a lot, but I used to have the odd glass of red wine. So now I just don't have red wine. I have something else, I have to confess. But so I've made other adaptations to some other parts of my life through the understanding of what those symptoms are and how I can better manage them, which I just wasn't aware of. So being aware, I think, is the critical thing.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that about alcohol, because I think that's probably the first place that many people would turn to as a bit of relief. And again, I'm no expert in this field, but I think having confidence in how you know your body is so important with everything, like with weight management, with exercise. Like, do what you know works for you, and everyone is different. So red wine wasn't ideal for you, Pippa. This is just an example, but like something else was okay. So don't feel like you have to follow the guidelines always. Like, your body is your own, and there's so many different experiences.
It is. I found I had to put sort of boundaries around the things that I knew were going to trigger more of the anxiety and the more of the brain fog and the more of the exhaustion, and have to look after myself and be conscious of looking after myself, I think, a lot more than I was probably previously. Yeah.
Nice. That self-awareness is an ongoing life job for all of us, I think. Claire says, so true. Red wine's a killer. There you go. We're not sponsored by red wine, so it's fine. We're going to go on to treatment, sort of management and remedies, because there's loads of individual cases. And Kathy, the first theme is HRT. So there's a few people that have mentioned that they can't take HRT. Is there any alternative products or advice that you could offer to help reduce symptoms?
Yeah, I mean, it was great to hear Nikki saying that for her, HRT has been a solution. It's not a solution for everybody. And sometimes there are medical reasons why you avoid it. Sometimes there's just personal reasons why you don't want hormone replacement therapy. I guess the first thing I'd say with my medical hat on is, don't accept necessarily that you've been told you can't have it just because you've been told. You know, delve into that a little bit more, particularly with the Peppy practitioners, because sometimes you're told you can't have it and actually there isn't a really good reason why that is the case. So that's the first thing. But if you genuinely can't use HRT, perhaps you've had breast cancer in the past, for example, then there are alternatives. For flushes and sweats, low dose antidepressants do sometimes help, not because you're depressed, but because they do have the benefit of relieving flushes and sweats for some people. You're not going to get the magnitude of benefit as you would get with HRT, but they may certainly take the edge off it. And then if you've got vaginal symptoms, you can certainly use vaginal treatments. So you don't need general HRT to relieve bladder symptoms, vaginal dryness, painful sex. Those things can be relieved in other ways, particularly using vaginal estrogen, but also non-hormonals, so moisturizers, lubes, and so forth. And then there's the strategies. You know, we all tend to look for medical, you know, a quick fix, but actually putting into place strategies, a little bit like Pippa alluded to. So reduce anxiety, stress reduction, cognitive behavioural therapy, all of those things will have a real benefit to some menopause symptoms, whether you use HRT or not.
Pippa seems to definitely resonate with that point. We, on the note of like mental well-being as well, because I think it's maybe underestimated how much your physical well-being can affect your mental well-being. Someone here has put, will I be prone to struggle with menopause more if I have suffered from depression throughout my life?
There are some people who have had triggers of depression at times of hormonal stress. So for example, premenstrual depression, postnatal depression, and then when they get to the menopause, they get menopausal depression. So if that is a warning sign for you, then I think it's worth looking out for and thinking ahead about strategies that you might put in place. And the strategies are the same, whatever stage of life you're at. So yes, there is a link. If you've never had clinical depression and you've already got your life in a way that you manage your mood, then probably the menopause may not affect it, although you can still feel quite tearful and quite angry sometimes, but not always clinical depression.
Perfect, thank you. We got to shout out Catherine. She's joined the running club. All ladies of a similar age. Now the highlight of my week. How good is that? Running is the best.
Excellent.
That's the kind of thing that I think if we can build from today, these sorts of groups and communities, then that's a real win. I've got to keep going. I've got to stop getting sidetracked. Kathy, last question on HRT. A few people have said, I need help because I've started HRT and 2 weeks in, I feel worse. Is it something that can happen and might get better, or is there a chance that HRT actually might not work for you, and how would you know that that's the case?
So you do have to give it a little bit longer. It can take 2 to 3 months to get the beneficial effects of HRT. But that, again, is something our practitioners can do alongside you. So if you just started HRT, we can check in with you and find out how you're getting on. Maybe the dose is going to need changing. Maybe the type of HRT is not quite right for you. And our practitioners can individually advise you about that on Pepe. So be patient. And of course, it will only treat menopause symptoms. So if your symptoms are not due to the menopause, HRT is probably not the answer.
Of course. We're getting so many questions, and I'm going to try my best, but there's a lot of obvious reasons here why people should be reaching out to Pepe and all of the support that they can get. We're going to turn a little bit more to like weight management and day-to-day living and managing yourself and your health. So Kathy, I guess starting with you, do you have any advice on weight management and nutrition? And then Pippa, it'd be great to hear from you about how you have managed that as well through your journey.
If I had the quick answer to losing weight at the menopause, I'd be a millionaire, because there is no magic answer, unfortunately, to losing weight at the menopause or at any other time. My advice is always to look at your lifestyle and your diet, and to see it as a long-term goal. Don't look at, oh dear, I've got to lose half a stone by 2 weeks' time. Look at it as a long process. The weight has probably gone on slowly, and the biggest achievement is if you don't put on weight. That's really good. And then if you're aiming to lose it, look at it as a long-term goal and make small changes, but be able to sustain them.
Perfect. And Pippa, what's kind of worked for you, I guess?
Yeah, I think adding to that, so just to signpost, we do have the Weight Watchers program as part of the Vitality program. So that more broadly, for me personally, it was reevaluating what I was eating, and as Kathy said, exactly those habits. So me personally, I've swapped out dairy milk for non-dairy milk, for example, and I've looked at how much carbs I'm having and when I'm having them, and it's all the things that I think the Vitality Healthy Living Program signposts and nutrition generally signposts, but I think it's being more aware of them, particularly in the menopause, and particularly the ones that are the triggers for you. And I think, as you say, just exercising if you can regularly, several times a week. Now, some people don't want to be getting hot and sweaty and going out for runs, because if they're suffering flushes and things like that, it may be, and particularly at work, I can't do run clubs at work. I can't get back, get changed, get showered and not feel hot enough that I can do that. So again, I've had to adapt what I'm doing and some different activities. So I think it's just about being more aware and adapting where you need to.
Yeah, perfect. I think I have to be careful, because I don't want to make it sound like if you're going through menopause that it's going to be necessarily a negative, because like, for example, we did a webinar a little while ago, and I learned that women at certain stages in their cycle can have a 16% improvement in their physical performance. Find a man who can get 16% just overnight. Like, that's actually an incredible benefit. So again, it might be something to do with the wording. And Pippa, I guess in your experience of the workplace, how have you managed to have conversations with your team, but also have you spoken to your manager about it? And what advice would you give to those people who don't feel like they can talk?
Yeah, no, so it's a great point. And within an organization, I think you need to have advocates. Whether you call them champs or senior people that are willing to get out there and talk about it. But I think we've got an intranet site here at Vitality, and I know other organizations have done similar things where you put content out there. You maybe have some user stories like we've had here today. Because I'm passionate and I'm an advocate for it myself, and I'm happy to talk about it as we've seen. I put my story out there, and we encouraged other people within the business to put their stories out there. And it's one of the main liked areas of our internet, actually, and it makes people feel so much better about what they're going through, because it isn't talked about much and it isn't open. So I think getting it out there as normal language, getting people talking about it and sharing their stories, for us, I think has been one of the main ways as an employer that we've helped support, alongside making the Peppy service obviously available and promote that broadly to everybody.
One of our values is to be a force for good, like you mentioned earlier. Wouldn't it be great if you could be the person that was that? And I think that's where managers do have responsibility to be looking out for their employees.
Yeah, and even male managers, they have wives, sisters, children, and we know it starts at a young age with girls at school. I think there was an article on the BBC News even this week about girls talking, not participating in sports and things because of periods. So it starts at a young age, women not talking about what they go through. So we need to look even earlier, maybe.
Continue for sure. Kathy, time is running out. We're going to go super quick fire. Someone just put sleep, exclamation mark. Is that a question? I think so.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a menopause symptom. It is difficult. Do the usual sleep hygiene tips, and I'm sure Vitality have got those on their website somewhere, their wellbeing as well, and they're on the Peppy app too. If it's part of a cluster of symptoms, think about menopause treatments.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Energy levels, exclamation mark. That's
Yeah,
not
again,
there is a question, but
yeah,
how can you
again,
increase or manage energy?
You look at your diet first, look at your nutrition and ask whether you're genuinely using having a healthy diet, and try and improve your sleep because you'll be exhausted if you're not sleeping. And then again, if your flushes and sweats are disturbing you, think about treatment for those.
You are good at quick fire, Kathy. I haven't actually got that many.
Oh,
the one is about, no, I have. There's just like hundreds. I'm trying to keep on track. This one is, so we mentioned brain fog. What was the official name that you called it earlier, Kathy?
word blindness.
Word blindness.
Yeah, slightly different. Brain fog is when you're really muddled. Word blindness is
Okay.
when you can't remember the word that you're supposed to say.
Okay. So that's cognitive function related. So
yeah.
would you look for that? Would there be strategies and techniques related to looking after your mental well-being, such as mindfulness, meditation and things like that? Or is it a physical, it's something that's part of menopause that wouldn't help with? Do you know what I mean?
No, it's a double-pronged attack because you have to look at the mental well-being and emotional health firstly, because there's no doubt that if you're feeling under stress or anxiety, those symptoms will be worse. Your word blindness and your memory brain fog will be worse. So you do need to look at those things. But then there are real physical reasons why the serotonin levels change and the neuro pathways change. And so the menopause has a physical effect as well. So sometimes you need to put into place strategies to actually cope with that. And that might be things like post-it notes, things to remind you, so that you've got those words there.
It seems to me like your overall holistic well-being is so important. And on top of that, you've got to help yourself as much as possible. Pippa, is that what you've experienced? Like you can do everything you can to look after your health, but you might still have to do a little bit more just to give you the extra boost.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I experienced it only recently. Kathy and I were both at an event speaking on stage, and we bumped into each other just beforehand. And I was absolutely terrified that despite having learnt what I was going to say and memorized it as best I could, that I was going to get up there in front of all those people and forget the words. The words just don't come. And the same for today. It's constantly there. So I think being as prepared as you can be, and I prepare much more for these things now than I used to. But Kathy and I discussed if I got up there and the words didn't come, I was just going to say, sorry, the words aren't come, menopause moment, and kind of get it out there. And that in itself, knowing that I was comfortable to do that, kind of calmed me down a little bit, because I wasn't so terrified that if it happened, it was more, if it happens, this is what I'm going to do about it. So I kind of overly prepared that it might happen. In fact, it didn't really, as far as I know. It was all a bit of a blur when I got off stage, but
It was great.
Thank you, Kathy. And the same for today. I had a terrible night's sleep last night. I was awake most of the night. Coming this morning, I was rushing around, and I just needed some extra time to calm myself, regroup, rebalance before joining this. So I think that's all we can do. Yeah.
You've nailed it again as well, Pippa. That is very unfortunately all that we have time for. I guess, like, how could I summarize? If someone said to me, how did the event go? From my perspective, like, I get it. Like, I get it more. And every time we do a women's health event, it's something that I understand more. But you have to do so much. And I think that we've covered a lot, and there's still loads of unanswered questions. So I really hope that if nothing else from this, you've got some confidence to know where to turn to, and you have found this time valuable. I might actually ask Nikki and Monica to put their cameras back on if they're still there, just so we can thank them. But I think that, there you are, nice one. We as an organisation have a real passion and commitment to support all people, and this conversation is about more than just women. So once this session is finished, you'll get a feedback form. So please do let us know your thoughts and what more you'd like to hear from us in the future. I also really do hope that I have done this important topic justice, and I'd love other men to get involved in the conversation. We're all part of this, and I think that we all have a role to play. And I promise you'll learn a lot and you'll be better for it, and it will open your eyes to so many different things, and that can only be a positive. So I think all that's left for me to say is thanks so much for joining and getting involved. Kathy, Pippa, Monica and Nikki, you guys are all brilliant, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your stories. For everyone watching, I hope you've enjoyed it. Please do return again and share our events far and wide. Tell your friends, bring your family, tell your colleagues. 5 people commit to that. Hopefully we'll see you all again soon, and take care. And I'll hopefully catch up with you all again shortly. Thanks all.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye everyone.
Bye.